Hi, welcome to Future Technos. Today we're talking about the Nikon Z8. This camera is making headlines because it brings the power of the Nikon Z9 into a more compact, lightweight, and affordable body. If you're a Nikon user, this is big news. You get the same sensor, the same resolution, the same frame rates, and the same autofocus system. Even the viewfinder and the rear LCD are just like the Z9. That's why many people are calling this the best Nikon camera for serious shooters who want flagship performance without the extra size or weight. One of the biggest reasons people are excited about the Nikon Z8 is the speed. This camera is fast, really fast. It can shoot at 120 frames per second at 11 megapixels with full autofocus and exposure tracking. And yes, that might sound like overkill, but it actually works well. For most purposes, 11 megapixels is more than enough. If you need more detail, the Z8 can shoot at 30 frames per second at the full 45.7 megapixel resolution. Or you can use DX mode to shoot at 60 frames per second. These are not just specs on paper. The camera tracks focus and adjusts exposure continuously at these high speeds, making it perfect for sports, wildlife, and action photography. Another highlight is the electronic shutter. It goes up to 1/32,000 of a second, which is great if you're shooting with bright lenses like an f/1.2 under strong sunlight. Most cameras with fast electronic shutters skip some shutter speeds, but the Z8 includes full third-stop increments. That gives you more control, especially in tricky lighting situations. Now let's talk about the ports. The Nikon Z8 has two USB-C ports. One is used for power and the other for data. This gives you more flexibility. You can charge the camera while transferring files or shooting tethered. It's a small feature, but it makes a big difference for people who shoot in studios or work on large projects. There is one feature missing from the Z9, though, the built-in GPS. If you often geotag your photos, you might miss that. But aside from that, the Z8 feels like a complete package. Nikon even says the autofocus system is slightly more sensitive than the one on the Z9. That means better low-light performance, which is always welcome. Another great feature is the dual card slots. One slot supports CF Express Type B or XQD cards, and the other uses regular SD cards. Many users still prefer SD cards because they're cheap, fast, and easy to find. Nikon gives you both options here, which is smart. Autofocus is one of the most important features for many users. The Z8 includes subject detection autofocus that works automatically. You don't have to dig through a menu to tell it to recognize faces or animals or vehicles. It just works. This is how autofocus should be. And the viewfinder is a joy to use. It's bright, sharp, and clear, even in bright sunlight. Some cameras struggle with exposure in bright conditions, but the Z8's viewfinder stays clean and usable. The camera also has built-in sensor shift stabilization, which helps reduce blur from hand movement. When you rotate the camera, the playback images rotate too, just like on a smartphone. It sounds like a basic thing, but not all cameras do this. And there's also a voice note recorder, which is especially useful for journalists or sports photographers. You can press a button and record a note during playback, which helps explain the context of an image. Nikon has made the camera easy to handle. Important buttons like menu and playback are placed on the same side, so you can operate the camera with one hand. For people who shoot on the move, this is a thoughtful design. You can even reprogram buttons. For example, you can change the mode button to a red button to make it easier to switch shooting modes without using your second hand. Now, a lot of people ask if the Z8 is good for video. Nikon markets this camera as a hybrid shooter, but honestly, it depends on what you need. If you're a casual video shooter, something like an iPhone might actually be easier. It focuses faster, handles lighting better in most situations, and has longer battery life. Unless you're working in a controlled studio environment or on a production set with assistants, the Z8 might be more effort than it's worth for video. Another interesting design choice is the lack of a mechanical shutter. There's no need for it anymore. The camera uses an electronic shutter for all exposures. It does have a protective shutter curtain, but that's just to protect the sensor when the camera is off. You can set it to always stay down or open automatically. It's not made of titanium like the old mechanical shutters, but it does its job of keeping dust away. There's no rolling shutter distortion, which is a huge plus. Many older electronic shutters would show wobbly lines or smearing when panning or shooting bright light sources. But the sensor in the Z8 is modern and fast, so it handles these situations well. You can even use flash with the electronic shutter, which wasn't always possible on older cameras. Battery management is another area Nikon has worked on. If you change a certain setting, which is explained in detail in user guides, you can leave the camera on for weeks without it draining. But if you don't set this up, the camera might assume you're shooting and drain the battery even when it's idle. So make sure to configure this if you want better standby performance. Of course, no camera is perfect. Nikon's autofocus, while improved, still isn't as fast or as smart as Canon's or Sony's. For subject recognition and tracking, Canon still has the edge. The Z8 does a decent job, but sometimes it'll focus on the sky or miss small details. If you've only used Nikon, you might not notice. But if you've used Canon or Sony mirrorless systems, you'll probably see the difference. Another issue is playback and navigation. Sometimes, when zooming into an image and trying to scroll, the Z8 freezes or gets stuck. This doesn't happen every time, but when it does, it wastes time and can be frustrating. And selecting focus points still feels outdated. You have to use the D-pad to move them around, like arrow keys on a keyboard. Canon makes this much smoother with their touch-sensitive controls. Nikon still has some catching up to do in this area. One problem that fast shooters will notice is file handling. Because the camera shoots so quickly, it's easy to hit the 10,000 image mark. After that, the file names roll over, which can create duplicates and mess up your file organization. Nikon could fix this by using longer file name sequences, like Leica does. Until then, you'll have to manually manage your files using software like Photomechanic. Also, if you're shooting to both cards for backup and one of the cards fills up, the camera will stop shooting. That's not ideal. And Nikon still uses menu banks instead of user preset modes like C1, C2, and C3 on Canon cameras. Switching from sports to portraits or landscape takes longer than it should. With Canon, it's just one click. On Nikon, it involves multiple menu selections. This slows you down in the field. Another missing feature is the lack of different crop modes. There's no 4:5 or 4:3 aspect ratio. You only get 3:2, 1:1, and 16:9. Most full-frame cameras offer more choices. And the LCD screen, while technically advanced, doesn't flip all the way around. You can't use it for selfies or vlog-style videos. That's disappointing for a camera at this price. Charging is done via USB-C, which is convenient. But the charge light is tiny and placed in a spot that gets covered when a camera strap is attached. It's hard to tell when the camera is fully charged unless you move the strap or pick up the camera. There's no light on the back either, so if it's sitting on a desk, you won't know the battery status at a glance. Also worth noting is the place of production. The Nikon Z8 is made in Thailand, not Japan. That may or may not matter to you. But some users prefer cameras that are made in Japan due to perceived quality differences. For most people, though, this won't make a big difference. Deleting large groups of burst shots is also slow. There's no fast way to delete a full sequence of images. You have to go into a complicated menu system and do it manually. Canon handles this better with simpler options. And there's no battery percentage in the viewfinder. You only get a small icon. To check the actual number, you have to go into a menu, which is not ideal during a shoot. Finally, the rear LCD doesn't adjust brightness automatically. That means when you go from indoors to outdoors, you'll have to change it manually. Most smartphones and even some lower-end cameras already do this automatically.